Spoopy for Heather. Hello, Internet. Welcome. The following are stories I found over the Internet. They are dedicated to my best friend and life partner. Enjoy. The portraits. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around the inside of the cabin, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by several portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred and malice. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and, exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning the hunter awoke. He turned, blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. A few months ago, a friend of mine, who is an up-and-coming nature photographer, decided to spend a day and night alone in the woods outside of our town. She wanted to get photos of the woods and wildlife as naturally as she could for her portfolio. She wasn't afraid of being alone, as she had camped by herself many times before. She set up a tent in the middle of a small clearing and spent the day taking pictures. She filled up 4 rolls of film on that trip, but when she went and got them developed, she saw 4 pictures that unsettled her. These 4 pictures were taken from inside the tent, of her, asleep in the middle of the night.
I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky for having a brain where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations, like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom likely far surpasses mine, considering he is confined to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course, they did at first. Charlie has been back home several times, each shorter in duration than the last. Every time without fails, it all starts again. The neighborhood cats with gouged out eyes showing up in his toy chest. My dad's razors found dropped on the baby slide in the park. Mom's vitamins replaced by bits of dishwasher tablets. My parents are hesitant now, using last chances sparingly. They say his disorder makes him charming, makes it easy for him to fake normalcy and to trick the doctors who care for him into thinking he is ready for rehabilitation. That I will just have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he's back, or they'll know it was me.
Daddy, I had a bad dream. You blink your eyes and pull up on your elbows. Your clock glows red in the darkness. It's 3:23. Do you want to climb into bed and tell me about it? No, Daddy. The oddness of the situation wakes you up more fully. You can barely make out your daughter's pale form in the darkness of your room. Why not, sweetie? Because, in my dream, when I told you about the dream, the thing wearing Mommy's skin sat up. For a moment, you feel paralyzed. You can't take your eyes off of your daughter. Then, the covers behind you begin to shift. A young girl is playing in her bedroom when she hears her mother call to her from the kitchen. So she runs downstairs to meet her mother. As she's running through the hallway, the door to the cupboard under the stairs opens, and a hand reaches out and pulls her in. It's her mother. She whispers to the child, "Don't go in the kitchen. I heard it too." In France, a young ambient musician by the name of Charles undertook an interesting new project. He was going to record the sound of himself sleeping and release it under the name La Nuit, the night. Charles lived alone in a rural area, which would remove things like car alarms, traffic, and such from being recorded. He planned his project for many months, acquiring the sensitive equipment to capture all outside noises, as well as his own during sleep. Finally, on the 27th of September, he decided to execute his plan. He set up all his equipment and fell asleep at midnight. The next day, Charles reviewed the recording. For the first hour, the recording played his own tossings and turnings, as well as some distant dog barks and a few car alarms. So much for his plan to distance himself from cars. This continued throughout the second hour as well, until Charles heard something that horrified him. For at exactly 3 hours and 24 minutes in, the recording played the sound of his bedroom door opening. Did you ever see one of those videos where you're asked to look for or follow a specific thing throughout the video? Then, at the end, they reveal that as you were watching, something large and intrusive moved around in plain sight, and you never even noticed it. It's frightening how often that happens, like how I just moved from the doorway into your room as you read this. A few years ago, a mother and father decided they needed a break, so they wanted to head out for a night on the town. They called their most trusted babysitter. When the babysitter arrived, the two children were already fast asleep in bed, so the babysitter just got to sit around and make sure everything was okay with the children. Later that night, the babysitter got bored and went to watch TV, but she couldn't watch it downstairs because they didn't have cable downstairs. The parents didn't want children watching too much garbage. So she called them and asked if she could watch cable in the parents' room. Of course, the parents said it was okay. But the babysitter had one final request. She asked if she could cover up the angel statue outside the bedroom window with a blanket of cloth. At the very least close the blinds, because it made her nervous. The phone line was silent for a moment, and the father, who was talking to the babysitter at the time, said, "Take the children and get out of the house. We will call the police. We don't have an angel statue." The police found all three of the house occupants dead within 10 minutes of the call. No statue was ever found. During the summer of 1983, in a quiet town near Minneapolis, Minnesota, the charred body of a woman was found inside the kitchen stove of a small farmhouse. A video camera was also found in the kitchen, standing on a tripod and pointing at the oven. No tape was found inside the camera at the time. Although the scene was originally labeled as a homicide by police, an unmarked VHS tape was later discovered at the bottom of the farm's well, which had apparently dried up earlier that year. Despite its worn condition and the fact that it contained no audio, police were still able to view the contents of the tape. It depicted a woman recording herself in front of a video camera, seemingly using the same camera the police found in the kitchen. After positioning the camera to include both her and the kitchen stove in the image, the tape then showed her turning on the oven, opening the door, crawling inside and then closing the door behind her. 8 minutes into the video, the oven could be seen shaking violently, after which point thick black smoke could be seen emanating from it. For the remaining 45 minutes of video, until the batteries in the camera died, it remained in its stationary position. To avoid disturbing the local community, police never released information about the tape, or even the fact that it was found. Police were also not able to determine who put the tape in the well, or why the height and stature of the woman in the video didn't come close to matching the body they found in the oven. Thank you so much for making it through to the end. Have a great day.